right? And I'm gonna stop there. I have something else, but I don't want to go too far. Okay, probably so.
What comes to my mind in regards to that is that it's an individual and collective responsibility or accountability, right? And the idea of leadership, how that can be utilized if the environment is not where it could be, and one of the individuals sees that. Can you see the potential or the possibility for that individual to make an impact on the environment, so the environment changes and improves that mindset within itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can go either way, right? So you can have people that are fixed mindset and they're very boisterous and they can drive that toxicity and change that fire station, that company, that department, that whole battalion. Right? I mean, he's one person who can easily change it. It seems to me like it's a whole lot easier to be negative and to drive that mentality and to have everybody join in your party on the negative train, right?
Yeah.
Or in my career, I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh yeah, I'm always Mr. Positive, right? Like that's not the case by any means, you know. But I think you can also have a tremendous impact of saying, hey, why do we think like that, right? As a new guy, new girl, whatever, you know, of saying, why do we do it that way? You know, and asking a lot of those questions. And if you hear, well, that's the way we've always done it, that's not the answer, right? So, okay, that just means either it's good for a follow-up question, or you know your audience and you don't do a follow-up question. You're like, oh, okay. And then you go ask somebody else, and then you continue to figure that out. And that's that mentality that you got to take, right? But there's a growth mindset right there either. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we do culturally everywhere in the American Fire Service and you know, with our specific departments and things like that don't happen at other fire departments, or are way worse at other fire departments, or are way better at other fire departments, you know. And so the cool thing with all of this is if you're willing to get in there and grind, you know, and use tools that we are happy to help you with, and for you guys as well, you're sharing just amazing content to help empower people to get out and how do you try to implement this stuff. And we would love to have that conversation, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And sometimes you have to change your environment, right? And sometimes you have to change, if you're able to change those people that you're surrounding yourself with. You might not have any control about what assignment you get, but you do control how you approach that assignment. You absolutely control those people that you're using as mentors, as soundboards that you can bounce ideas off of. And unfortunately, they might not be in the same firehouse as you, and you're just waiting your time out, and that might be years, unfortunately. But you know, you got to be an advocate for yourself. And I think, you know, the cool thing about the space that we operate in with the fire services, there's tremendous people, absolutely tremendous, and they all got into it for a great reason. And you can learn a lot from everybody. But if you can create those good relationships in that firehouse, and you're like, well, that's the way we've always done it kind of crew, and you start to ask those questions and you say, hey, can we look at this building really quick? We just drove by it. Or hey, Cap, or hey, LT, I think there might be some forcible entry issues on the backside of these new buildings over here. Can we just drive by it on the way home? We don't have to talk. Can we just drive through the alley on the way home? And then you can start to have those conversations. And now you can also say, well, what do we do about that? What do you know about that, right? And then if they don't know, it's an opportunity to say, hey, I just watched this cool video from Irons and Ladders, and they talked about how to size these doors up. And now, boom, now we got them, right? Because now you've created an opportunity to train, maybe lead up the chain of command, and to bring those people into, hey, it's okay you don't know. Even if you're a promoted officer, even if you've been a driver here for 25 years, it's okay that you don't know or you forgot, or you're scared to get out and fail in the training ground. We're in the nest, right? We're in the trust tree now as our company. And this is what I personally value, and you can have those conversations. You know, those are some of the things that we're trying to empower for sure recruits on, and to teach them how to have some of those conversations. And some of those conversations are really, really, really tough, especially if you have a severely deconditioned person on your company. You have to figure out ways, because the public is depending on them, the department is depending on them. And, you know, that's what we said we would do when we showed up, whether you're a volley or a career firefighter. And so what can you do to help empower that person? What are those sticky points for them? Why are they scared to maybe go out and train? Why are they scared to get in the gym? Maybe they've never been taught how to work out, right? So maybe they're scared of getting hurt and they're towards the end of their career, you know? Valid concern. So what resources can we tie them into to get them over that initial hump, to say, hey, you can train on duty, you can train physically, you can train basic skills, you can train mentally on duty with, you don't have to do MRF, right?
Right.
Yeah. Probably should do MRF on duty, but we probably should do something and get your heart rate up, because here's all this cool stuff I learned about heart rate, even though we're just sitting in a seat in a fire engine. So we have to do that. So those are some of the ideas that we really try to incorporate, that growth mindset, that failure. How do we attack some of those sticky conversations? And sometimes the best thing for you to do when you gave it a good college try is to try to change your environment. And that might mean leaving your organization.
Right. Yeah. So something that comes to mind, I love all that stuff you're saying now, Kevin, and to kind of circle back to some of those things you mentioned earlier as well, with the training failures, our collectively emphasis on growth mindset, and inspiring or facilitating an environment, a culture, right, of growth. And I specify culture because on two hands, I mean, coming from the military myself, that's a culture much like the emergency responder service of, you know, suck it up, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and drive on, right? And, you know, what we're realizing is that thought process, that way of thinking, that way of operating is having very significant mental impacts. We're losing folks, you know, and, you know, why I say that is, real quick, to go back to my question from earlier about the mental readiness, technical readiness kind of division or structure. Yeah, I mean, spot on. And I think, you know, to some extent, it's okay that, you know, sometimes we can't pinpoint, you know, what that breakdown is of mental readiness focus versus physical or technical readiness focus. But I think it's definitely something to, you know, as Barbara and I do our work and we work with different agencies and whatnot, we look to bring that awareness of that mental readiness aspect and the impact and importance of it more to the forefront, because, you know, training for my deployment, you know, back in the early 2000s, no mental readiness training at all. It was, here's what your job's going to be downrange, and here's how you do it really well, right? What they did prepare us for is what we were going to see, right? So we all knew we were going to see explosions and you know, whatever, right? But what the military didn't do was prepare folks to see that and then be able to bounce back appropriately, right? So you had a lot of soldiers coming back not able to process that appropriately. And so when your buddy dies or gets hurt in combat operations, a lot of soldiers saw that as a failure, right? So here we're talking about failures. A failure can be anything. You didn't get into the building right, or it was, I could have got my buddy out of the Humvee or MRAP or Stryker, and I didn't, right? And so there was poor processing of these failures and a lot of negativity focused on the negative aspect of, you know, this experience, right? And so, and I'm tying a lot of this stuff in that you said, right? Because then we're talking about, okay, how do we provide folks the tools a lot of times when high-risk occupations organizations, talk about tools, it's like, what technical things can we provide you with? Gun, safety vest, helmet, protective gear, what's on your belt to utilize when you need it, right? A lot of times when we say tool, we think about those things, right? But where I love what we do is, let's provide those mental tools as well, right? A lot of times that's what we're missing, are those mental tools to utilize with those technical and physical tools that we have at our service. And that is those tools that ready us to see those things, have failure, right? And respond to it accordingly, but also process it appropriately as well, so we can apply that growth mindset, and now we know how and why we want to come back differently the next time. That processing is so huge. And, so there's sort of my connection with, what are we talking about when we say providing tools, right? It's those mental and technical tools that we want. We want to strengthen the mind just as much as we want to strengthen the arms or the legs, so that we can move when, move, shoot, and communicate, or save lives, right? And do it appropriately, and again and again and again, right? Because you don't go on one mission, you don't go on one call for service, and you're like, "Oof, I'm done, I'm tapped. That was rough," right? You got to go again, right? And I saw it, right? Some soldiers were like, "I can't do this anymore." We had to leave them home, or on the fob, if you will, right? Just broke down, And these sorts of mental tools are so crucial to really bringing that readiness into focus, thusly that improvement and increase of resilience. And then within that, right, we're talking about applying that growth mindset, so we're not reaching burnout as well. So I kind of just wanted to speak to that real quick, because I think you're spot on, and as we go down this road, and as we can even do more conversations and work with you, those are some of the things we really want to key in on, is bringing that mental aspect to working out and strengthening that brain like a muscle as well, more to that forefront, and then looking at, like, how are we combining that with throwing hose. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Kevin.
Sure.
Throwing hose, or, breaching a door or something like that. How, okay, we did it. Here's the tools we use. We did it well, we did it bad. But now let's go here. What's going on? What's going on, and how can we mentally work through that so that our performance is where it needs to be?
Good stuff. It's the mental toughness lasagna, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's layers to it. Absolutely. And I love lasagna too. So you can find anything with food. You got me hooked. Yeah, and it's all part of it, right? And some of what you said is figuring out, how do you decompress after that incident, and that's just with your company or your family, or do you go out and talk to somebody? And I think that's a really, really neat thing that's happening in the American Fire Service right now. And it's a very, very, for the most part, grassroots movement to show that you can change cultures, and you can change the mentality of the American Fire Service as a whole, let alone just your engine company or your truck company, right? It's okay to get out and talk to somebody, right? And there's fantastic licensed professionals in your town, no matter where you are at, or within an hour of you, that you can go and talk to. And that's very, very, very important, and sometimes calls stick with you that it doesn't make any sense why they do. It wasn't like a super traumatic call, but you can't stop thinking about it. That's totally normal, right? Not normal is maybe some ideations that might come down the road with that, but you got to work through some of that stuff. So a lot of what we do is that mental performance skills training to get ready for the call, or if you get jammed up in a really bad situation and you got to get yourself out in a survival situation, mentally you got to be ready for that. What we don't do, because we have no training in that, but we're happy to connect people to amazing resources,
is that, you know, the counseling, PTSD, that sort of stuff. And the fact of the matter is, in our line of work and as a soldier, police officer, EMS, if you don't have some form of PTS, then you're actually not a human, right? You're a cyborg. So there will be stuff that sticks with you, and that's totally normal. Just make sure how you're processing that is normal as well. Okay. And so I remember when I was training to try to get a job, you know, and you're practicing, and there was always a question that would come up, and I got it on one of my interview panels along the way back when, was, you know, the dark humor of the industry. That, and that's how a lot of guys and girls process that, is that dark humor, which is totally normal. Some other people, you got to understand your audience and know who that's appropriate around. Right. But it's okay also to go and see somebody through an EAP program or a counselor or a psychiatrist, psychologist, any of that stuff, to try to be healthy and happy, you know. And there's great organizations out there. Next Rung is one of those organizations. That's a firefighter-based thing. They're doing amazing stuff from the grassroots level. So if anybody out there is looking for any of those resources, please DM us, shoot us an email, and we will do everything we can to get you tied into some resources to help you. The IFF has some great stuff out there. Just understand that is a huge part of that mental lasagna as well. So what we really want, we don't want to just be reactionary. You know, a lot of departments are doing great stuff with peer support and empowering people to go and see these providers, no questions asked, or paying for it, not even on the record, all of that stuff. But they're not doing anything to front load their people to be ready for what the stressors of the job entail. And those stressors in a different lasagna, right, is you get a stress and it sticks with you, and another one, and another one, another one, another one, another one, until your cup is overflowing. And I think for anybody that's been in any of these emergency services or military is going to unfortunately experience that. It's just, we have the tools. Have we been trained on the tools to recognize that before that spills, and it's catastrophic, absolutely terrible. So we love having that conversation too. We just aren't trained in that, so we're going to push those resources. But what we're trying to do is saying, hey, that's normal. Make sure that we have systems from your very first day that you can do that sort of stuff, but then also have systems to build on mental toughness, and to really intentionally put yourself in positions in a training environment that's going to grow your resilience overall, which is going to help on that PTS side of things, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the analogy of mental training to physical training is so powerful, and I see the way to sharing that so much as a productive thing, and changing the culture over time, because it's so easy to understand that you wouldn't get into the burning building without proper training. It's not that easy to understand and accept yet. That the same principle applies to the mental condition. And the mental field, or psychological field, if you will, has been focusing really well on the reactive side, right? After something happens, then we have resources. But the thing that we can actually train when there is a space to actually build those skills, you don't build them in the burning building, like maybe, but that can go either way, right? And that's just so crucial, and at the same time we see, including you, Kevin, more and more people seeing that, understanding that, and taking action. And another piece to that is not everyone takes the action unless something is literally burning, you know. And then it applies to anything in life, right? Like we can talk about any topic related to generally to life. And so often we are just not proactive. Sorry, proactive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
If there's anything else there, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it comes down to, right, that we have to be reactionary on a lot of things that we do because we don't know. And most of these buildings have never been inside of them. And so you have to try to connect some dots based on the training that you've done, right? Okay, I know that's a tri-level style house. The bedrooms are here because I can, you know, we've in that exact house, but not this address, right? And then now, well, you get inside and now it's hoarder conditions. That's a totally different thing. So how are we training to empower our people to be able to react to those things, react to that the building is on fire? We shouldn't be surprised by that. You got called to a building on fire, and you'll hear it on a lot of these YouTube videos and things like that, where very obviously that first arriving company is surprised that the building is on fire, even though they got dispatched to a fire. And they get out of the room, don't have their gear on, and they can't put their mask on in less than 20 seconds, right? And they're not even really sure how to stretch their hose lines. And so when you throw this stress response on top of that, because you don't have good solid basic foundations, whether it's basic firefighting skill foundations or EMS or police or any of that stuff, and you don't have a good mental toughness, mental resilience foundation that you've been training on top of it, it's really hard to overcome that sympathetic and parasympathetic response, right? Sympathetic being, you know, that flight. And so those are the things that we have to train, and we have to have that conversation. And that's really what we enjoy having is, hey, let's intentionally put ourselves first in these situations, whether it's just in the gym, and then we're doing a YouTube scenario, right, in the middle of a so how are we intentionally training that stress response, you know, and how can we get better over the years to be reactionary in the positive way, because we have a good solid foundation, you know. And so we're attacking that whole we'll figure it out when we get there mentality at Firefighter Craftsmanship. Yes, we will. But it's not going to happen if you don't intentionally do work at least every time you're at work, you know, let alone on your off days. So and once again, it applies to the family dynamic too, right? So it's very, very easy to be reactionary, especially if you're tired or you have that cup is starting to overflow. Very, you know, reactionary, and it's and then you look back on it, and now you have shame and regret and all those things that you yell or whatever, you know. And so that's the part of being human. This is I mean, right? We're all human, and so we know that we can intentionally train all these things, and then intentionally deal with them, or at least recognize, hey, I'm feeling pretty hot, which means I'm getting, you know, I'm feeling sweaty. And so now what are my tools that I've been taught or that I've trained to overcome that before I just lose it?
Yeah, that awareness is huge.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
I do have one more question.
Go for it.
Do you have anything else before we wrap it up?
Nope.
And I hope we will have more and more conversations on topics that we just mentioned and furthermore. I would like to wrap it up in a way of asking you, Kevin, as the founder of Firefighter Craftsmanship, not Shift, as I said at the beginning, which I apologize for. What is the ideal vision of the firefighter department's mindset?
That's a big question.
Right, she does that often.
Put you on the spot. That's the change your resilience, right?
That is 2 hours, Kevin, not one. Did we tell you one?
Yeah, I mean, I think
in one sentence. You can say it in one sentence.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen based on.
I know.
You know, I think it starts with why do we exist? You know, and so we have to communicate very well of what are those. Why do we exist as your fire department, and then why do your people exist, you know, and you have to really be in tune with your people and understand where they at, what are their goals and their dreams, what are they after, you know, and then empowering those people to reach those things. And it might not be to work for the fire department forever, and that's okay. You know, maybe it's the best for them not to work for the fire department right now. And those organizations need to have some of those conversations. But why do we exist, right? And we exist for them. We exist, we got to go to work for them. That is the only reason that we, as the fire department, roll out of the door, is because somebody called us to come help. You know, and so as a fire department, as an organizational structure, if everything doesn't filter through the lens of them, then we shouldn't do it. Really that simple. And so in our opinion, to them, what they expect and deserve, we have to ask them first off. We have to ask the customer, what do you expect from us when we show up? And then listen to that, and then cater everything else to that, right? So what sort of basic skills training are we consistently doing? How are we onboarding people to make sure that they're set up for success on their very first day? You know, recently we had a recruit class come out, and the very first set, they had a victim, right? And so we've had firefighters that have not had a victim in 30 plus years on any of the calls, right? And so they had to be ready on their very first shift to pull a victim out of a working fire environment. Are we doing everything we can to empower and equip our people with that? And so firefighter basic skills, can they do the job when they get on the street, right? Based on the resources that we have available to us. I mean, there's not an endless pot of money, you know? Then also, are we empowering them with the basic skills to mentally deal with this job? We know that first responder suicide is super, super high. Don't have a really great number on that, but they're estimating potentially around 300 American firefighters are killing themselves every year. And we're line of duty death, not including cancer, line of duty death, we're on an average of 100 a year. And we have a lot of cardiac research, a lot of things talking about cardiac, because, you know, over 50% of those 100 are dying from cardiac related injuries. So are we equipping them with the physical fitness skills and the nutrition skills and the sleep skills? Are we setting them up for success to serve them? Are we equipping them with the mental performance skills to serve them so they come to work happy, healthy, smart, strong, ready to rock and roll, you know? And then what are those, how do we help people throughout their career, and as they ebb and flow and they hit these bell curves and they think they know everything, but they don't, because they've only been on the job maybe a couple of years with no reps, or they didn't do any training, right? So there's my one sentence answer, right? Those are kind of from the street perspective of what do we need on the engine companies at my level. And we exist for them. And so everything that we do should focus on that. And in our opinion, that includes our off days too, right? And so if we're on a crazy busy company, you got to be very intentional. It doesn't mean don't go out and have a good time, right? And hopefully once this whole COVID thing is, and we can reintegrate with our friends, and now you got to be very intentional with that, you know, with having fence beers or whatever, you know, like seeing some of those folks outside, or calling them on the phone, or, you know, don't disconnect. And I don't know if as a whole, as the American Fire Service, we're not equipping people quite yet with a lot of those tools, but there's some fantastic work being done with you know, people like Rick George that we talked about, and Next Rung, and what we're trying to do at FFC to empower these people. And it's really, really cool to see. I see some names on here that I recognize from former recruits or people that work at our department. Or people that have taken our classes, and they're pushing the envelope. And it's so cool to have this conversation with them of, you know, hey man, I tried to bring some of this and it was not well received, or hey, I tried to bring some of this and this is what we're doing with it. And then we're taking tons of notes of like, well, that's how we're going to make class better next time, you know, or we're onboarding some of those people to come help us at FFC because they've taken it this really cool angle. And we're selfish sometimes and really want to learn from people like you guys. You know, how do we nerd out on this stuff, and then how do we we try to help some of these people, all through the focus of we exist for them.
Yeah. No, beautiful. Love that one run-on long sentence, Kevin. That's great.
My
no,
team so proud right back in the day.
Love it. Just two last things for me. You mentioned the suicide rates and all that stuff. I think there's a informational paper out there called the Ruderman study. Not sure if you've heard of it, but it talks a lot about the firefighter suicide rates. I think it mentions law enforcement as well, but I know it mentions firefighters. So Ruderman study has a lot of those numbers. I think the study ended either end of 2019 or early 2020. But Barbara and I have used it a little bit for some of the stuff that we've done. And then, I really enjoy, and I think Barbara does too, so I hope I'm speaking properly for her, but I always love hearing when people use the words, as we're talking about this stuff here, equip and empower, right? Because that's why we chose the name we did, armor, equip, and empower, right? And we want to equip people with the right tools, to mentally get through those things, empower them to know how, when, and where to use them, so that they're armored against what will happen in life. What will happen, not if it's going to happen, it will. It's just a matter of when. So, right? So we want to be armored and ready to experience that. That being said, I'm going to shut up there on that. Kevin, I think we have a lot to talk about again next time. So we definitely, as Barbara mentioned, we want to do more of these repeat guests. I think one of the things we want to get into next time even is that happy at home, happy at work thing. I know we talked about it in our own discussion with you. We'd love to bring that into the foreground for the audience because that's huge, right? What's going on at home impacts what's going on at work and vice versa. There is a bidirectional impact there, and it's really important to bring awareness to how that impacts, how it's working or happening in our lives, and how do we get after managing that appropriately so that we're our most effective when we're on the job, but then we're our most effective when we're off the job as well, which is another job in itself, right? Being a family member, right? Whatever that family member is, dad, husband, wife, mother, brother, sister, child of parents, right? Like that's what we want to get after is managing that. So we're who we need to be when it matters most. So I think there's a good discussion there next time. For sure.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's been fun. I'm disappointed in some of those people that I know out there that there wasn't any hilarious comments in the feed.
Wouldn't that have been nice? But I do appreciate all the comments from folks who did.
Text messages by the end of the day.
Right. There's that humor, right? That's right.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'd love to have more of a conversation and have your insight. If if you're like that's actually incorrect, let's steer you this way. Convos of how do we empower and equip, and armor those folks to really push the envelope for themselves, and then to spread the poison, right? Of positivity and mental toughness, and a lot of things that are out there right now are making us really soft, and we have to very intentionally root against those things, and we got to make sure we're not hiding behind a keyboard and hammering somebody on a call that you weren't on, but instead looking at that call and be like, wow, they got their butts kicked. What would we do differently? What would I do differently based on the resources that I have available to me, based on our culture, based on how I've been armored and equipped job, and what do I got to get better at to make sure that doesn't happen to us? Because the cool thing now is everybody's got that cool little camera phone. And
right.
We talk to recruits of like, don't be the dude on YouTube, man. If you are the guy or girl on YouTube,
right?
The one catching the baby, be the one that's crushing that forcible entry and fire attack. Don't be the one that's putting your helmet on backwards. Right. That's kind of important. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and for everybody out there, please, for people that find this information valuable, tell us what you need more of. Tell us how we can help you out. How can we drive? A side note: if anybody knows how to get off of like these car warranty phone calls because I get like 9 of them a day. That's challenging my resilience, my mental toughness. Right there
you go. See, resilience is everywhere.
I just got right there. So, what can we do to help empower you and your companies and try to help you lead from the top or from the bottom? Some things that we're happy to create stuff or be like, I have no idea. You're going to please share it when you figure it out, but we've created some cool training calendars to help people kind of lead from the bottom. We've created things to help them come up with their personal statement of why do you exist? What are your ethos? That's actually below your why. What's that foundation? And you can use that on the job and for sure at home. So everything filters through that decision-making process. We got nutritional stuff on there. We got TAC fitness stuff on there. And we got a whole bunch of what we think is very valuable mental toughness and mental resilience stuff. And we vow to not send you garbage. We're just going to send you good, solid resources. Yep. This is all about just trying to grow, each other, selfishly ourselves, and just to finish these careers strong. And one final note, we just had 2 senior officers retire from our fire department a couple weeks ago. They both had over 41 years on the job. Right. Wow. And so it was really cool to sit down with both of them. And they were both really happy. They didn't leave all pissed off. They left, they left begrudgingly. They were very sad to leave the fire department, but it was time. Plus go enjoy, right? You've earned your keep. And so how do we focus more on how do we leave? How do we show up to work happy? How do we go home happy? But then when it's time for us to either go do something different, or when it's time for us to retire, because we're in one of those weird industries that still has people come in and they work for 25, 30 years versus, it's my 7th job and I'm going to leave next year. And so how do we empower people to leave organizationally in really, really good headspace and good, soul space and good health space? How do we empower them to make sure that we do that? And organizationally, there's a lot of things that we can do, I think, to empower our folks. So for any of you out there that have an opportunity or at some point in your career, you have an opportunity to influence your department, let us know when you figure those out, because that's something that we really, really want to focus and try to help on.
Yeah. Awesome. No, right on, right on. Kevin, can folks check you out and what you're doing or what the organization is about at ffcraftsmanship.com? Is that
craftsmanship.com, so the full firefighter.com, or all of our handles are FF Craftsmanship. Facebook or Instagram, or ffcraftsmanship@gmail.com is our email address. Hit us up. We'd love to have a conversation with you. We'd love to figure out a time to come and train with you, or come teach a regional class, or hopefully see you at a conference once those doors open back up.
Yes.
The big one that we have booked for now is the first weekend of October. We'll be teaching at the Mile High Firefighters Conference here in Denver, Colorado. And so that's a super fun 2-day hands-on class. It's different than the last one that we taught because we took all that student feedback and made it a little bit better. And so that's a thing. Or if you want to explore some options of maybe hosting us to come teach your department or your region or whatever, happy to try to navigate some of that stuff. So yeah, hit us up. We'd love to have that conversation, and thanks to you guys for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you for joining us, Kevin. We really appreciate hearing from folks like you.
Great conversation.
Yes, awesome.
No, good. Joking, but
good.
Seriously good. A lot of stuff that is interrelated and really can make the difference over time. It's a process. That's what we see in our work as well. It's super dynamic, exactly as you said in the last few minutes, and it's just a process, and we are extremely honored to be part of that process that you are doing.
Yeah, definitely a process. When we don't have it figured out, we're just trying to share what we've learned along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's enjoy the process. So awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Looking forward to more of these. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for your comments, for all that stuff. And hopefully you folks get some good stuff out of this if you want to rewatch it later on. But thanks for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Have a great day.
All right. Take care, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye. All right.